Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahushai, Ba'ashim Rakakodash, Barakathom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to Akim out there pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Raya with another video, and I'm going to start it off with Amos chapter 8, verse 11. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord Yahweh, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Yahweh, that famine of the word, which is quickly approaching. Because if you've been keeping your eyes in the news, you can see how these governments and companies are looking to pass rules and legislations to censor content on the internet, what they would label as so-called extremist content, which we know that word extremist is such a slippery slope. But in the spirit, we know it's all to come after the men of the Lord, chiefly through GMS or Great Millstone, out there on the highways and byways pushing this word, as well as putting up these video epistles, because these elites understand the scriptures, and they understand that when the prophets of the Most High are out there on the highways and byways preaching this word, that whatever kingdom's ruling at the time is going to come to an end. And these elites understand that they're the Edomites of the Bible, and they know the judgment of the Edomites, that after they're taken out of power, they're going to go into 1,000 years of hardcore bondage and slavery before their permanent eradication. So, of course, they don't want that. That's why we're seeing the beginnings of their demonization campaign, with them putting the Hebrew Israelites in the mainstream media, labeling that black label unto us to weave us into that black identity extremist narrative or a black terrorist narrative to get us off the highways and byways and take our content off the internet by labeling it as extremist. But, brothers, this should be a beautiful thing and uplifting for you, because that just goes to show that we're that much closer to our salvation. And this is a quick quote from J. Rockefeller. The internet should have never existed. It's a threat to national security. Translated, it's a threat to Edomite security. What does it say down here? It's screwing up the monopoly my family has had on America for the last 140 years, and people are finding out what scumbags we are. People are finding out that you so-called white people are the Edomites, the wicked that the earth has been given into the hands of, and you don't want that. But now I'm going to get into this article on activistpost.com titled, EU Proposal Pushes Tech Companies to Tackle Terrorist Content with AI Despite Implications of War Crimes Evidence. A new video on Orient News' YouTube channel shows a scene that is all too familiar to its regular viewers. Staff at a surgical hospital in Syria's Idlib province rushed to operate on a man who has just been injured in an explosion. The camera pans downward and shows 3 bodies on the floor. One lies motionless. The other 2 are covered with blankets. A man bends over and peers under the blanket, perhaps to see if he knows the victim. Syrian media outlet Orient News is one of several smaller media outlets that has played a crucial role in documenting Syria's civil war and putting video evidence of violence against civilians into the public eye. Active since 2008, the group is owned and operated by a vocal critic of the Assad regime. Alongside their own distribution channels, YouTube has been an instrumental vehicle for bringing videos like this one to a wider audience. And YouTube has been an instrumental vehicle for the men of the Lord to push this word out here. A lot of brothers out there were woken up by these YouTube videos. Or at least it was until August 2017, when without warning, Orient News' YouTube channel was suspended. And I'm sure a lot of you brothers remember that net neutrality last year, which is they've been quiet about it recently, but as you can see, they're working behind the scenes to get closer and closer to internet censorship and banning content. After some inquiry by the group, alongside other small media outlets including Bellingcat, Middle East Eye, and the Syrian Archive, all of whom also saw some of their videos disappear, it came to light that YouTube had taken down hundreds of videos that appeared to include, there's that word, extremist content, Salakia. But these groups were puzzled. They had been posting their videos, which typically include captions and contextual details, for years. Why were they suddenly seen as unsafe for YouTube's massive user base? And brothers were posting videos a couple of months ago on how the subtitles or captions on particular brothers' videos were saying stuff that was completely opposite to what the brothers in the videos were saying. The captions were saying, oh, Allah, or talking about terrorist bombing attacks, seeing how they're trying to control the narrative and link us into extremist groups and label us as extremist content to censor and take off the internet. Because there was a new kind of authority calling the shots. Just before the mysterious removals, YouTube announced its deployment of artificial intelligence technology to identify and censor graphic or extremist content in order to crack down on ISIS, which we know is a government psyop, and the similar groups that have used social media, including YouTube, Twitter, and the now defunct Google Plus, to post gruesome content of executions and recruit fighters. Thousands of videos documenting war crimes and human rights violations were swept up and censored in this AI-powered purge. So they use that government psyop ISIS and the content they post to come after sincere channels posting content on war crimes and human rights violations, actual real news. And that's what the Men of the Lord post about the war crimes, you Edomites, by going over to these other countries and overthrowing their democratically elected governments to set up puppets so you can steal their resources, and human rights violations, especially against the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, which are the children of Israel, by sending drugs to their communities, poisoning their water, and especially you cops killing these jakes on the streets. After the groups questioned YouTube about the move, the company admitted that it made the wrong call on several videos, which were reinstated thereafter. Others remain under a ban due to violent and graphic content. Another slippery slope term to use, because saying that the so-called white man are the Edomites and that they're going into slavery and that they're going to be eradicated after 1,000 years would definitely be considered violent and graphic content. Or even the fact that there's going to be martial law where people are going to be starving out here or getting raped, or that nuclear missiles are going to destroy America would fall under that label as well. The myth of self-regulation. Companies like Google, parent of YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, which all rub shoulders with the government and are working on that New World Order agenda, because these companies wouldn't have got that high up and had such prominence unless they were breaking bread with the rulers of the world, have legitimate reasons to take special measures when it comes to graphic violence and content associated with violent extremist groups. It can lead to situations of real-life harm and can be bad for business too. But the question of how they should identify and remove these kinds of content while preserving essential evidence of war crimes and violence is far from answered. Companies have developed their policies over the years to acknowledge that not all violent content is intended to promote or incite violence. While YouTube, like other platforms, does not allow most extremist or violent content, it does allow users to publish such content in a news, documentary, scientific, or artistic context, encouraging them to provide contextual information about the video, which we do. We make it clear that this isn't a black identity extremist movement. We make it clear that it goes by the spirit, not by skin color. But that's something the powers that be refuse to see, or refuse to allow to be seen, so they can push forth their demonization agenda. But the policy cautions, in some cases, content may be so violent or shocking that no amount of context will allow that content to remain on our platforms. YouTube offers no public information describing how internal mechanisms determine which videos are so violent or shocking, and that's for a reason. This approach puts the company into a precarious position. It is assessing content intent for public consumption, yet it has no mechanisms for ensuring public transparency or accountability about those assessments. The company is making its own rules and changing them at will to serve its own best interests and the interests of the powers that be. Because as I said earlier, these companies like Facebook rub shoulders with the elites and government organizations to push forth their agenda. This is an article from Medium.com titled, "Internet Censorship Just Took an Unprecedented Leap Forward and Hardly Anyone Noticed." You got Mark Zuckerberg right there, YouTube, Facebook. I'm going to jump down to here. Anytime you try to talk about how internet censorship threatens our ability to get the jackboot of oligarchy off our necks, you'll always get some guy in your face who's read one Ayn Rand book and thinks he knows everything, saying things like, Facebook is a private company. It can do whatever it wants. Is it now? Has not Facebook been inviting U.S. government-funded groups to help regulate its operations, vowing on the Senate floor to do more to facilitate the interests of the U.S. government, deleting accounts at the direction of the U.S. and Israeli governments? Back with Jay Rockefeller, the internet should have never existed. It's a threat to national security. And handling the guidance of its censorship behavior over to the Atlantic Council, which receives funding from the U.S. government, the EU, NATO, and Gulf states. How private is that? Facebook is a deeply government-entrenched corporation, as well as Twitter and YouTube, and Facebook censorship is just what government censorship looks like in a corporatist system of government. And here's the Atlantic Council right here. A snippet of who funds the Atlantic Council, its organization Bellingcat, and therefore Elliot Higgins and Ben Nemo. Ooh, we've got the European Union, which it says the EU proposal could make AI solutions mandatory for internet censorship. We've got JP Morgan and Chase, some elites, Lockheed Martin Corporation, a U.S. weapons manufacturer, NATO, Northrop Grumman, another weapons manufacturer, the United States Air Force, Army, etc., etc. Oh, Rockefeller and CO Incorporated, Rockefeller Brothers Fund. Again, Jay Rockefeller, the internet should have never existed. It's a threat to national security. A committee in the European Commission is threatening to intervene in this scenario with a draft regulation that would force companies to step up their removal of terrorist content or face steep fines. While the proposed regulation would break the cycle of companies attempting and often failing to self-regulate, it could make things even worse for groups like Orient News and other alternative media sites and channels that are pushing out real news out there. But first and foremost, again, the men of the Lord who are giving you this real truth on the way things are working. What does the commission proposal say? Under the proposal aimed at preventing the dissemination of terrorist content online, service providers are required to take proactive measures to protect their services against the dissemination of terrorist content. These include the use of automated tools to effectively address the reappearance of content which has previously been removed or to which access has been disabled because it is considered to be terrorist content. B, detect, identify, and expeditiously remove or disable access to terrorist content, Articles 6.2 stipulates. If adopted, the proposal would also require hosting service providers to remove terrorist content or disable access to it within 1 hour from receipt of the removal order. It further grants law enforcement or Europol the power to send a referral to hosting service providers in their voluntary considerations. The service provider will assess the referral content against its own terms and conditions and decide whether to remove that content or to disable access to it.